Middle East analyst. And Micah, how big a deal is the Saudi king in all of this?
Well, actually, we have to be somewhat realistic in terms of the whole picture. The reality is that it's nothing new to suggest that East Jerusalem should be a capital of the Palestinian state. Nothing new at all. And actually, that's the original Saudi plan in the first place. So we have to give them some credit. The reality is that the Trump administration knew full well that establishing the U.S. embassy in Jerusalem would create some tension there. And that's exactly what's happening. There's no doubt about it.
But it does seem like the crown prince, the king's son, seemed at least open to sort of more of the Jared Kushner point of view about Jerusalem and not making any ironclad promises to the Palestinians about Jerusalem.
That is true, but nonetheless, the idea, even in the U.S. proposal of Jared Kushner, which we haven't seen, that to not have Jerusalem and East Jerusalem as a Palestinian capital would be somewhat problematic in terms of a larger picture.
So where does all of this lead, Jared Kushner and Jason Greenblatt and the others who are still trying to massage their plan and figure out when and where to release it?
Well, what it really means is that they've got to realize that the pressure that would be brought on by Saudi Arabia to bring the Palestinians to the table is still there. But the pressure ultimately is now on Israel to make certain that they accept certain elements of the plan itself. This might actually work in favor of the Trump plan by pushing Israel a little bit more, which up until now, the United States has sort of been protecting Israel. So in order to sort of balance this back and forth, it might actually work for both sides.
So in other words, Jared Kushner goes back to Donald Trump and maybe goes back to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and says, look, we've all seen it now from the Saudis. East Jerusalem has to be part of the equation. It can't be some other neighborhood. It can't be some sort of part of the West Bank. You have to agree to at least have some piece of East Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital.
And that was not just the plan. It's been the plan since 2002. I've actually been to the Palestinian parliament, which is in formation there in Ramallah. It's there. It's Abu Dis. It's just outside of Jerusalem. I'm sorry. So it's just outside of Jerusalem in Abu Dis. It's in East Jerusalem itself.
And would Abu Dis, does that qualify as a Palestinian capital if that's... Because I've heard some people say, well, no, it really needs to be more in the central part of Jerusalem or in the old city. Or...
Well, that would be more problematic. The central part of Jerusalem would be more problematic. I will say, as the crow flies, the Abu Dis building of the Palestinian parliament, which is structured right now, is closer to the Har HaBayit, to the Temple Mount, than the Knesset is in terms of distance, as the crow flies. But the reality is that the nature of the way in which Jerusalem is divided is not flat. It's not straight. It's not angular. It's not a rectangle. So what happens is that you're going in and out like this all over the place. So Abu Dis actually slips in there very, very nicely.
Do you see any way that Jared Kushner and Jason Greenblatt can introduce their plan without any sort of guarantee that the Palestinians will even participate in talks?
That's where the problem exists. In other words, it's got really nothing to do with the Saudis saying yes or no to this idea. It really has to do with whether or not the Palestinians will actually even come forward. Forget about saying yes. Just come forward and even talk. Right now, they're not even in that stage. So they were hoping, the president was hoping, Trump was hoping, Greenblatt and Kushner were hoping that the Saudis would push them into an acceptance, not about Jerusalem, just about the concept of discussion and dialogue. That has not been successful even before the Jerusalem move, you should note.
In the last 10 seconds that we have, are you optimistic at all that the U.S. plan, the Trump plan, will be introduced by the end of this year?
Look, I'm always optimistic, because if you're not optimistic in this part of the world, you end up being depressed.
Micah Halpern, Middle East analyst. Micah, thanks as always.
Always a pleasure.
Still to come, in the Trump effect, the president